Greetings and salutations. David Duford here at Ford Insurance Group. I'm here with David Heath, our face-to-face broker trainer. David, say hello.
Hello, everyone.
David, thanks for being here. And JD, a new agent that's had some really good success in the field selling face-to-face that David has been training. JD is here to ask some pretty important questions about how to go through the process of going all in full-time in the business. He's had some success kind of getting started initially, and we're going to kind of get into that in a little bit. But JD, go ahead and say hello and introduce yourself.
Hi, good morning. My name is JD.
JD, appreciate you being here, man. So let's get started right there, because we were going to originally do kind of a walkthrough of your success. We do this kind of a main kind of template video with our agents that are newer, that have had some success. But you brought up a really good question about how to transition into this business full time. So why don't you kind of take us from the top, tell us kind of what your situation is like, and then ask your question about how to get into this business full time. And then David and I'll kind of try to help you out and give you some guidance.
Okay, fantastic. So a little bit of context or background in where I'm coming from is I just retired from the fire department. So I spent 20 years there. Unfortunately, it was only the last 11 was with the city that I was working for. So the pension they were offering was marginal. So I decided to take out a lump sum. We moved out of state to Colorado. And my plan was to give this insurance thing a go. I started off with ACA back during open enrollment, like in September timeframe. I got sidetracked with a lot of the things, the pitfalls that David has warned us about. I focused a lot on the CRM. I tried to generate my own leads on Facebook and learn a lot of carry. It was just overwhelming. So I had limited success. So come January, I ended up taking a full-time job doing some construction management just to keep the bills paid, keep the lights on, right? And so then this coaching program became available. I decided to take 2 weeks off from work in order to give this a shot. And David Heath had really helped me out, because originally I had planned on taking the first week to do this focus on just the studying and training. And then the second week I was going to go out in the field. He recommended doing the training, kind of on the job or weekends and evenings kind of a situation, and then spend the 2 full weeks out in the field, which I think was a very, very good recommendation on his part.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and to kind of add on to that a little bit, I think one of the reasons why I was able to make that work is just because I'd been following, you, David Duford, for a long time on YouTube, and watching you probably for years. So I was relatively familiar with the process and the final expense. And then, I got talked to final expense originally, and then you made Medicare look really sexy. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do that. And then ACA looked even more sexy than that. I'm like, no, I want to do that. And so kind of went full circle that, you know what, let me start with FE. That's what all the like really high producing Medicare people recommend anyways.
Right.
Like Adam Howard and some of those other people, I've seen them say that. And then even if you do focus on Medicare later down the road full time, you still have the FE training in your back pocket, so you could pick that up along the way. So, but really where I'm at now is I'm ending that 2 week period with my job of being off. I took 2 weeks unpaid leave, had to come up with a excuse to get out of there, and now I'm kind of in the situation of, do I try to do this on a part-time basis and kind of working it? My problem is I have 3 kids at home, 2 of them in daycare. I can't work evenings and weekends. It's like not an option for me. My wife works full time, 8 to 5 as well. And so it's like, do I try to fit this in? Like, because I only have 8 to 5 really, because I don't want to take time away from my family. So do I try to do this part time? Am I ready to go full time now? Do I try to get a couple more weeks of this full time? And just trying to make that decision. That's kind of the crossroads of where I'm at.
So, okay, so let's kind of recap here, because this is an important question all agents need to consider. A lot of people want to do this business initially from like a part-time basis, then go full-time, or maybe they want to go all in, but they're worried about kind of the consequences because of family and other obligations. So let me kind of walk through this and to help me help you better. So your spouse has a job, she works full-time, but your only availability is 8 to 5. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Exactly. And she's our breadwinner right now at the moment.
So
she's in healthcare.
If you keep this current job you have, is there any time available at all to sell final expense?
I would have to make time. I'd have to come up with some kind of an excuse where I would leave at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon on 2 or 3 days a week. That's kind of what I was thinking.
So you're thinking about, okay, so you're taking time out of the full-time job to fit this in. Okay.
Right. And so I would either maybe take less money there. I'm on salary, so maybe I would switch to an hourly rate. I don't know
Okay.
how that would look. I know they want to keep me, so I know that they would be flexible. But
Okay.
here's what I'm really worried about is like if I'm not really focused, and then I'm only
Yeah.
getting five presentations a week, and it's like, and then I'm like, well, I was good at the beginning, and now I kind of stink, and then I'll be really at like, now what do I do?
Right.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
Right. So you kind of know yourself in the sense that if you lessen your activity, it's going to start messing with your mindset, more or less.
Possibly, yeah. Yes,
Possibly.
exactly.
Okay. Is there times at all in the evenings during the week or on the weekends to sell?
To run a to no, not to sell. Like I'm a bit like my toddler's getting bed at like 8 o'clock at night. It was like, no, I'm not going out that late. From 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's like our witching hour. Like that's like all craziness. Like I can barely even eat dinner just because we got chaos going on. So
100% understood.
Yeah.
If so again, I'm asking these questions to better formulate my answer.
Okay.
If let's say you quit the job you're at and you're selling final expense, can you get the bills paid with just what your wife makes?
No.
Okay.
I can't pay the bills with what I make and my full-time job. Like I would need supplemental. I'm supplementing that off of my savings.
I see.
So I would either need, so I need to figure out either being this successful doing this part-time or being successful doing it, part-time or full-time, essentially. But either way, I have to be successful.
Right. For sure. The nice thing, so a couple of things here. It's really comes down, and Dave, you can pop in and give your thoughts here after I kind of go through this. It's an element of risk and the appetite that you have for it. I started part-time because I had a business that was part-time, but it paid some kind of cash flow. And I didn't want to give up, even though I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to give it up because it paid the bills, right? And for me, it was right to take a slow roll approach into it because I could manage some of these things that you were concerned with. Like, okay, I only get 8 appointments a week. No big deal. At least I'm out there slowly building a bankroll. And then I went full time after 6 months. So it worked fine for me. I failed out of the business, came back again part-time under the same auspices. It worked well. It took about a year to go full-time. You can go all in for sure. And you've gotten really good results first couple of weeks. I think what this is going to come down to is ultimately knowing yourself, and kind of your mentality is really important. If you're feeling really worried that you're going to become your own worst enemy by doing part-time work and not getting the same kind of activity you're doing now, then maybe part-time's not good for you. Maybe full-time is the way to go. The other element is how much money do you need to be free and clear of what your current obligations are? In the sense of if you go full-time and you can write consistent business, can you manage that without the job? Right. So there's some money elements here that come into play. Also, what your cash out was from, your retirement, right? That's probably a really important thing that you've got here that's going to give you a lot of wiggle room. And the extent that you have that. David, some thoughts here you want to jump in and kind of give some advice because you've been through this a lot with your agents over the years.
Well, the first thing, I don't want to underestimate how difficult it is in this business to work on a limited schedule. It's tough. I want everybody to know that. I've got some friends that are part-timers and they've been part-timers for a long time. I don't know that they're ever going to go over to full-time. It is more difficult. The object in this profession is to see as many people as possible. Activity equals policies, and money comes behind policies. So it's an activity-driven business. And I usually tell people, if you can't put the activity in, this may not be for you. You have to look at your schedule, what you have allotted, And like I said, this is coming from a lot of people that have been part-time for 5 years. I don't know that it's been beneficial for them, honestly. Um, but I'm like David, JD, you're gonna have to excuse me, assess where you're at, where your family's at, where your bills are, what's over here in this account. You've got to take all that into consideration when you're making a decision. I work better under pressure. So me, I dive head first into it. That's the way I do everything though, JD. I don't know if that's best for you, but if David Heath was sitting there, I took the dive. I had
Yeah.
3 mouths to
Yeah.
feed, plus
And
my spouse.
I've got a couple other things to interject to kind of add a little bit more context to the situation. So,
Please. Yeah.
one of the things is in that first week, I made more money in that week than I make in a month, the job that I'm at. So I'll say that. I mean, now I know there's going to be some people that drop off. You only get advanced on 75%. So those are things to consider. And then the second thing that I wanted to mention was since we just relocated from another state, we're just renting at the moment, because we weren't sure where we wanted to land. So I want to buy a house. And I'm like, well, wouldn't a full-time job look better on my income for qualifying for a house, right? If I'm 1099, you have to have 2 or 3 years of proof. So that's kind of a factor for me as well, to be honest. So, but that's a little bit more of where I'm coming from.
Yeah. Some thoughts here. The other element is if you quit your job, how fast could you get another one? I think we need to consider this, right? In your state of where you're at professionally, if you went all in the final expense and it didn't work out, let's just say worst case scenario, how fast could you get a job with equal pay to what you're doing right now? Could you even go back to work with these people? Would they want you
More than
back?
likely, yeah, more than likely I'd be able to go back, depending on how much time, if they've replaced me or that kind of a situation. Or I would be able to find a job somewhat easy, I would imagine.
Yeah. And so I think you need to weigh that part more heavily, I think, because it's not in all walks of life that we get an opportunity for independence or to make a lot of money, and obviously take a risk. You're in a really good spot in the sense that you do have this bankroll from your retirement. You are getting some really good traction out the gate, right? And you are also in a position where you feel pretty confident that you could walk back and work with these people. They obviously sound like they really like you and will work with you on a flex schedule. Like that's leverage for you because you're a good person. Like good businesses want good people, right? So they'll make it work. So I think that's a positive thing in going full time because it's not like you have to wait 3 months before you get to go back to work or something. You know what I mean? So you're not going to be losing money. I think the other element to this is that if you go full time, I would recommend putting a deadline. Like I'm going to give myself X amount of time before I ultimately decide I'm all in. Meaning maybe it's 3 months, right? I think that would be a good 90-day projection. I'm going to give myself 90 days of good and bad and ugly before I decide, unless it's just ugly after ugly, which I wouldn't think it would be because you've gotten good success out the gate. But give yourself 90 days. Okay. That way you put yourself on a deadline. Like David suggests, you now have a little urgency and pressure to perform. And if it doesn't work out, you've given yourself a fair amount of time to give this business an honest shot on a full-time basis. And you can walk away feeling like, hey, I laid out the groundwork. I gave myself a deadline. I succeeded or I didn't. And you'll have better clarity, I think, at that point, what you're going to do or what you're going to want to do. But it gives you enough. It's not like, okay, I'm going to give it one more week. Well, what if next week's terrible? It's not necessarily meaning that you're terrible. Everybody has ups and downs, right? It's enough time to give yourself an honest shot. And then keep accountable to your spouse and your family too, right?
Sure.
That's also important to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I would say that I may have become a little bit hesitant or gun shy based on my initial experience out the gate with ACA, but I've run my own businesses since like 2010. I was a fireman. Everybody has a side project or something they've done, so I've ran multiple businesses with varying levels of success. Some of them just more passion projects or hobbies, like I worked on Jeeps and things like that. But like now I'm in a position where like, no, I got to bring home the bacon now. Like I have to make some money. And I feel like this is my best opportunity based on my skill set and my personality. So that's what brings me here to this.
Yeah. David, you want to add anything to this?
Well, I guess one of my questions too, JD, I've worked in manufacturing, been in management positions there. Um, how big of a raise are you expecting um, in the next 2 to 3 years with the company you're at now? Do you see a big increase? Like, is there a lot of room to climb up the ladder, or are you getting closer to the top of that ladder? I guess is my question. Because I think that needs to be weighed in there
Yeah,
too, honestly. Um,
yeah,
to
yeah. No,
give a
that's
to give a true answer.
so that's a really good question. And so basically, I'm kind of like the number two guy in the company, other than the owner. And the owner has already bought property in Tennessee, of all places, and he wants to start splitting. He wants to start splitting his time. And though he hasn't said it directly, it sounds like his plan for me is to essentially just take over the company whenever he leaves, when he's gone full time. And I'm just and to be truthful, the last construction company that I worked for, I ended up buying out the owner, and I took over that company also. So I have experience doing that, and maybe that's why he's kind of kind of leaning towards that game plan. But to be quite frank, if I got to choose, I would really choose the insurance. I just prefer that more so than the construction. I like meeting with new people every day, like going out in the field, knocking doors, and I just enjoy that interaction more so than doing the same thing every day, I guess you would say. So, but yeah, I've got great potential there, but I'm not sure that that's the direction I really want to go right now.
It almost sounds like you've already been there once to me.
Yes,
Correct?
yes,
Yeah, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good assessment because when you make a decision, you say yes to one thing, but no to many others, right? And I
hmm
think it's a fair assessment when we're looking at your career and ultimately what you want is what's best for you and your family, right? What's the best
correct.
outcome, hopefully immediately, but long term too, right? And you got to look at what you're leaving behind to make this decision. So all of you watching, it's the same question. It's like you're going to take a risk on this business whether you like it or not. There's no guaranteed outcome, and there's an opportunity cost to working for somebody else and building up your reputation, climbing the career ladder, right? There's no promises there either, right? There's hope, but there's definitely a risk in going this direction when you're an independent broker and it's all in on your business model. And you need to take that seriously because there's consequences with any decision, good, bad, or ugly. But I think the good thing, JD, is that we can put a deadline on this. You can approach your spouse and say, hey, here's what we got. Here's the opportunity. Here's the long term. This is why I do that 5-year plan with Medicare talk, because it's so important to think about. You could be building residuals. There's a lot more to just this than final expense. And I'm going to give myself 3 months to make it work, just for example. And that's enough time that if you're going to do well, you're going to get traction pretty quickly within that period of time. It's enough time to pass to really get a good sense of the business, if you like it or not, long term, and compare it to what you could do or what the other possibilities are.
Yeah, it's
So,
actually funny that you say that because that was actually my initial plan. So I moved here in August. I just retired in July, and I was like, well, I'm gonna give myself to the end of the year to be successful at insurance. Like, well, I wasn't. That
right,
was my first shot, and I wasn't. So that's why I had to get a job in January.
right.
And you know what I'm saying? Now I'm circling back, like now, like I just didn't want to give up yet. I was like, well, I really feel like I could be successful at this. I just don't think that those are the right products for somebody to start with, and I wouldn't recommend that. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying? So that's
build on that because I think that's so important because we try to get new agents into a position to sell final expense in most cases to begin with because it pays faster. But you went the ACA and the Medicare route. Can you kind of expand why you think that initial approach with those processes didn't work as well as final expense has?
sure. I will tell you that it was just like drinking from a fire hose. Like there's just way too much information and everything to learn to feel confident to be able to sell that. Now I did sell some products, and I was sold on the residual in the long term, which I still think are fantastic. But what I've learned is exactly what David has said before, is that FE is the easiest product to learn, though the hardest to sell. And based on my experience, is like, well, I've sold a lot of things in my past, and I'm a good people person. I feel like I can limp along that much as long as I feel confident in the product, that I have enough product knowledge to sell the product. And that's where I struggled with ACA. And well, that's really where I started, was because I was selling 3 states. I was doing it over the phone and trying to learn all the carriers, and each carrier has so many plans, and then each plan has, your co-payment and your maximum amount of, like, there's just so many things. Like, I couldn't pick a plan for them that I felt confident that I was putting them in the right place.
Right.
Does that make sense? And so
Perfect
with
sense.
FE, it's very straightforward. Like, most of these people don't have any coverage, and also I'm a Dave Ramsey dude that came from, uh, everybody needs term insurance. But after listening to you for years, I was convinced, like, you know what? If these people don't put these whole life plans in place, like, they're not going to have anything, and they're not going to save this money on their own. Otherwise, they would have already done it by now.
Right.
And so that's kind of what sold me on the FE product itself. But yeah, I recommend any agent, and I consider myself a relatively smart person. I feel like I can learn quickly. I've learned a lot of new things, like different industries, over my experience. And it was a struggle doing ACA Medicare out the gate. I think they're good long-term products, but man, if I can recommend to anybody, do what David says, start with FE and then go from there. That would be my recommendation.
Did you feel like the self-generation side, you'd mentioned you were doing a course, was that
Yeah,
added confusion, maybe,
it wasn't
perhaps?
so much that, it was just distracting. And I was working
Mm,
for like weeks, doing 40 hours a week, working from home, and essentially working and making progress, and staying busy. But I wasn't, none of that was selling, none of that was revenue
right.
producing activity. And so that's kind of where the fault was. And I had a timeline, like, I've got to start making money by X point, and I didn't hit the number that I was hoping to see. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where it put me.
Revenue producing activity. That's a good one. I think that's the thing we all need to remember getting started is you got to make sales. That's what revenue producing activity is. And in the beginning, you can opt to just buy leads, right? That's the preferable route. Not that self-generation is wrong. It's just complicated. It's distracting. But for some people, I don't know if this was for you, JD, or not, but just making a comment, it's satisfying. Oh, I've made this ad. I've got this copy and
Oh,
generating
yeah,
leads, but is it
100%.
sales?
And then
No.
CRM stuff too, like setting up automations and emails and like all the fancy stuff that is fantastic and it really works. But to me, those are advanced techniques. Like, I mean, yeah, I figured it out and I managed it, but like, it took me away from doing the things that made money, and that
Yep.
was, going out and making sales.
Anything else you want to add to this question of going all in and when to do it that we haven't covered?
The other thing that I'll mention is, when the coaching program became available, again, because of my lack of outstanding success, right, that I expected right out the gate, I was a little bit gun shy. And then the coaching program came up, and I'm like, I'm not really sure what to do here. And then I spoke to David Keith on the phone, and I think that was really like a turning point for me, because he really gave me the confidence to like like to to let me like know, like, oh, it's okay. Like, it's
Yeah.
okay that you struggled there, and kind of dusted me off and said, that's all right. We're good. You, just because you weren't as successful as you hope to be with that doesn't mean that you can't be successful with this. And he really helped me convince me that, because I wasn't sure at the time.
Yeah, that's how, and if you don't mind building on the mentorship side of things, and I ask you to do this because this is what we've done that's completely different from the rest of the industry. I wasn't even doing this in 2022. We had great training, but it was very much autonomous. You're on your own to figure this stuff out. Ask me some basic questions or join a Q&A call. But what we've done now, just in case the audience is unfamiliar, we have mentors for every single agent that joins our agency. And it's not just one call and then you're ready to sell. I mean, it's multiple times a day, going over the script, going over objection handling. It's intensive, but it develops you at such a better rate than many people just find they can do on their own. But I'd like you to kind of comment on what that experience was like on the mentorship side, and
Sure.
how it impacted your ability to be successful selling that first week in the field.
That's a really good question. And I will say that I feel like, based on just the information alone that I got from you on the school platform and all the resources that are available there, that I could have been successful. but not to the level that I was. It would have taken me much longer, and probably if that's all I had available, I for sure wouldn't have tried this full-time thing. I would have just tried it part-time and just taken me a year or two before I finally got enough experience and confidence to feel like I was in a place where I could do it successfully. So for sure, that's a night and day difference. And I think the reason why it's so much of a difference for me, and it wasn't, not to take anything away from David Heath, but it wasn't anything special or specific that I learned that was like different than anything else that I'd already, you had already covered. But the difference was it was more, I felt like I was working with somebody. I wasn't out alone by myself on an island, forced to figure this out all on my own. And if I had a question, just being lost. Like there's accountability built into it, and I get to speak to him every day and continue to build that positive message and confidence and answering questions. Like, I just felt like somebody was there with me through the process to help me be successful. And that's somebody that cared about my success personally. Not that you don't, Dave, but you're obviously busy and you can't quote unquote, hold everybody's hand through the process the way that having a mentor or coach. The other thing I'll add to this though, I kind of had a special, unique situation where there was a local agent, experienced, successful agent in my area with over 10 years of experience that offered to take me out for ride-alongs for my first week. And again, yes, I would have been successful without his help and mentorship eventually, but man, it sped the process up so much faster. So if I had to put numbers to it, probably 50% of my success I would attribute it to Dave and all the trainings and school and videos. Maybe another 20 or 30% to David Heath and my coach. And then if it's available to you, I feel like it's very valuable to be able to ride out with somebody to have that extra help on, in the field, if that's an option for somebody. So
yeah,
that was my experience.
Appreciate you sharing that. You had the benefit of living right next door to a guy who's been doing final expense, like literally in the same town for years.
I have to shout out my good friend Gatlin Traub. He was very instrumental in helping me out getting started.
Yeah, we will help you guys when you join DeFord Insurance Group to do ride-alongs. David, you can go do ride-along with David. I'm sure David wouldn't mind that. He's still out there selling, right? So you can get some field time there. We'll put you in place. Now, many times what you have to do when you join us is we have to send you somewhere else, right? Because it's rare that somebody's in your backyard that's crushing it. That's, because not everybody is a good ride-along experience, even if they're just an agent. Like, JD got like a guy who's been on convention trips yearly for at least 5 years, So anyways, like we can coordinate with that, but that's awesome.
And I'd like to add, Dave,
please.
Based on that experience, I would love to be able to provide the same thing for other people moving forward and doing the ride outs. And I know I'm obviously not a tenured guy that I have the opportunity to ride with. But if you look at other industries like the fire service or even like pilots, the people that go out and train people are the people that just went through the training. So they may not have the experience, but the training is fresh in their mind. And if they're successful, you know what I'm saying, they can transfer that stuff onto that new person. So being that I had that benefit from the person who helped me out, I almost feel like in a karma or whatever sort of way, like, but I also enjoyed training and coaching people as well. But I was like, man, I would eventually love to be able to offer that same opportunity to folks as well.
All right. I'm going to remember that. Well, and the truth is, David I'm sure will confirm, training actually makes you better, because when you take people out in the field or just train them and mentor them, you're constantly immersed in the fundamentals. And then when you take people into the field, you're on stage, man. Like, you better make a sale or you're going to feel real dopey if you're not making results, right? So it's actually a really good thing. So very good. Guys, this is why we do this program. Training is so powerful and pivotal. And I was just telling my wife in the other room, which we just did another interview with a gentleman earlier with David. I really regret not expanding the business, my DeFord Insurance Group, to this level that we have recently, because there are so many agents who would have benefited from this that never got the opportunity to. And I think what I do from training is great, but there's something you just miss out on when you don't have somebody in your corner to coach, develop you, and help you become better. And that's what we do that nobody else does. It's the training. It's the development. This business is not like that. It's throw you to the wolves, forget about you, much less get any kind of basic scripting training or anything like that. And it's dangerous. And there's a high failure rate in large part because of that. And guys, if you don't want to be another failure statistic and you think training is valuable, that's what we do. I highly encourage you to check out more details about DeFord Insurance Group. how the mentorship program works, to apply. We don't accept everybody. This isn't right for everybody. We make everybody go through an interview and application process because we want to have agents who are all in, who have a mindset at least of being all in. Schedule wise, we do take part-timers or full-timers, but we want people just as committed as we are. And again, to go do that, if you'd like to learn more, is davidduford.com/FAQ. From there, you'll see more about how we work, what the process is, commissions, carriers, et cetera, how to apply, and then how to interview. And in the meantime, JD, thank you so much for doing this. Appreciate you doing this. And David, appreciate your work in helping these agents get trained up and ready to roll.
Yes, sir. Thank you all. Thank you, JD.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time.